How's it going, everyone? It's Ben Foggins, Media Corner, back again with a brand new video for today. Welcome back to another movie review, aka After I Saw. This time for this new episode for the series is going to be my review on the 2023 animated jukebox musical comedy film, and this is the third entry of this franchise that was created by DreamWorks Animation since 2016, and it's also the second film to be released this year after Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. And as you guys can tell from the title of this video, of course I'm here to review Trolls Band Together. Now, this is the third entry to the Trolls franchise, and this is directed once again by Walt, who directed the previous film, and he was also the co-director of the first film, and this was co-directed by first-time director Tim Heights. And in this film, we see Poppy, once again voiced by Kendrick, discovers that Branch, once again voiced by Justin Timberlake, was once part of a boy band known as Brozone, which consists him and his four older brothers, in which his four brothers are called Floyd, voiced by Troye Sivan, John Dory, voiced by André, Spruce, voiced by David Diggs, and Clay, voiced by Kid Cudi. And what ends up happening is that for Floyd, he is kidnapped by these two wannabe pop stars named Velvet and Vina, voiced by Amy Schumer and Andrew Rannells, in which they basically want to use his essence to basically help them make them more popular. And so from there, we see Poppy and Branch teaming up with John Dory to go on this adventure to try and find Branch's other brothers, and hopefully they can reunite together and try and work together to try and rescue Floyd from these two evil wannabe pop stars. So that's pretty much the story of Trolls Band Together. Before I get into what I think of this movie, I should tell you guys what I think of the previous two films. The first movie, which came out back in 2016, I remember seeing that movie in the cinemas when it came out, and I thought the film was enjoyable, even though it's not like DreamWorks' next classic since Shrek or How to Train Your Dragon, but it's not bad of a watch, even though it's one of DreamWorks' weakest films and stuff like that. And the second movie, which is Trolls World Tour, which that one came out back in 2020, it was supposed to be released theatrically in cinemas until the whole COVID situation happened and all that. So that one had to skip cinemas entirely due to that situation. And so they released it at home, and I did watch it at home. And that sequel was decent. It certainly wasn't as good as the first film, but it wasn't a bad watch, even though it's another one of DreamWorks' weakest films. And so when I heard we were getting a third entry to the franchise, I was pretty curious to see what this one was going for here. And I was kind of surprised what this one was going for here when I first saw the trailers and all that, in terms of like what are the new stuff they were adding and all that. And this film came out back in the 20th of October of this year in the UK, in which it came out the exact same week as Killers of the Flower Moon did, which I saw that film first, and so I decided to see this film just a couple of days after it came out, since I was kind of busy with work and all that. And while for the US, it came out on the 17th of November, which it came out the exact same week as the new Hunger Games movie, as well as Thanksgiving. And so, just like I said, I saw this film just a couple of days after it came out in my area, and I saw this in a really big screening, although there wasn't that many people in, unfortunately. But after watching this new entry to the franchise here, I can also say I put this one on par just along with like the second Trolls film here, because while it certainly isn't as good as the first film, but it isn't a bad watch here. I can definitely describe this one for being another decent entry to the Trolls franchise here. The things that I liked in this movie was the animation, in which the animation for the most part is pretty colorful and vibrant, just like the last two films. And while this film does tend to throw in some new animation styles here and there and all that for a few scenes, in which I thought some of those moments were pretty surprising here, like they used one that's kind of like a reference to the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, in which when I saw that, it really surprised me here. And as for the voice work in the film here, I thought everyone for the most part were pretty solid and yeah, pretty good for the most part here. Like the returning cast members from the previous two films, like Kendrick and Justin Timberlake and all that, they are pretty good and yeah, pretty solid in the film here. And as for the new people who are in this film here, in which you've got André, Troye Sivan, David Diggs, Clay Cudi, Camila, Cabello, Amy Schumer, and Andrew Rannells, I thought everyone for the most part were pretty good and yeah, pretty solid as well here. And as from the songs, there are a few like original songs here and there in this film, which I thought were pretty catchy here. And while this film does tend to throw in some cover songs here and there and all that, just like the previous two films, in which there were a few that were pretty catchy here for the most part here. And as from the humor, there are a few humorous moments in the film that I thought were like mildly enjoyable here. Like most of the humor in this film is a bunch of references to a bunch of boy bands and all that, in which some of those moments did get a few chuckles out of me and all that. And well, there were a few that just didn't quite land for me in the slightest. And as for the overall story of the film, it isn't too bad here. Like the overall main story of the film is just pretty basic and all that, and it isn't too bad here, even though it does tend to throw in some predictable moments that I can tell like what was going to happen here and there and all that. And while this film does tend to throw in a few plot holes here and there and all that, in which when it came to some of those in the film here, I kind of felt some of them here in this film just felt really messy and yet really less structured here, and that's one of the biggest issues we have with this film here. It's just that there were a few plot holes in the film that just didn't quite work out well in the slightest here as well. But overall, in the end, guys, Trolls band together. I thought this was just overall another decent entry to the Trolls franchise here. Well, it certainly isn't as good as the first two films or anything like that, but it isn't a bad watch. It still has some good stuff, while it does tend to have a few flaws here and there and all that. And if you're a massive fan of the Trolls franchise, I can definitely tell you may have a good time with this one here. So that's pretty much all to say about Trolls band together. I'm going to give Trolls band together 3 out of 5. Like I said, I thought this was just overall another decent entry to the Trolls franchise here, and while it does tend to have a few flaws here and there and all that, it certainly didn't harm my experience watching this film from beginning to end here. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching for my AK After I Saw review on Trolls band together, and let me know what you think of this movie if you have seen this already or if you just recently checked out this film. Did you have a really good time with this, or is this not really a popcorn treat? As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and this has been Fogan's Media Corner signing off.